Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing a quick channel update and then a reading wrap up. And yeah, let's start with the channel update because it's quick, it's not anything major. The only thing that I wanted to tell you guys is I've rebranded the channel recently. Just before this video, you'll notice that I renamed it from Stories with Sheikh to my name, which is Asfandyar Sheikh. And the reason for that is that with Stories with Sheikh, I liked the branding a while ago, but I thought it's better to just kind of stick with my name, which is what most people tend to do anyway. So yeah, that's, and also like if you search Stories with Shake with on YouTube, it's kind of like hard to find stuff from me. So I thought it's better to kind of just stick with my name. And yeah, that's basically the reason why I'm doing this. And other than that, yeah, the content will stay mostly the same. It's going to be still mostly about books. And as I've mentioned when I started this channel, like for people who've been around for a while, they know that I said that I will also talk about other forms of media, or as the old channel name mentioned, stories. So yeah, I may still talk about TV shows, movies, and stuff when I watch them, and yeah, if I want to. But right now, I'm mostly focusing on books anyway. So yeah, I'm not watching too much stuff, so that shouldn't take over the channel too much. But that's something that I was planning to do from the get-go. So yeah, if you've been subscribed, there's not going to be any major change other than the channel name. And yeah, the other good news I wanted to say is that I've got a new channel intro, which my cousin made for me, so thanks to him for that. And yeah, so leading into the reading wrap up, you'll see the new intro. And yeah, so I hope you like it. And yeah, that's all for the channel update. So let's get into the reading wrap up. All right, so you should have seen the new intro now. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm doing a reading wrap up now. And this one, it's, as has been tradition on this channel now, it's very late because my last reading wrap up was for September, or I think it was for multiple months. It was like June, July, August, September, something like this. And yeah, then I said, yeah, nice, now I can do them on time again, but now I'm here in February. So what happened actually was that I recorded a reading wrap up for October and November. I didn't do one for October because I didn't think I read enough just in October, so I decided to put October and November together. And I recorded that back in December, but I never got the time to edit it because I got a bit busy in December. Then I went back home for vacations and stuff, and then I came back, had an exam. So yeah, I just kept putting it off. So yeah, now, and in the meantime, like 2-3 months passed, so I was like, okay, at this point it doesn't make sense to just do this. So I'm now doing basically a wrap up for October, November, December, January, which shouldn't really prolong it because I didn't read a lot in December and January anyway. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to give over to Past Me right now, who will tell you what I read in October and November, and then I will get back to you here and take over from December onward. So Past Me, take over. Yeah, I ended up reading 3 books, as I said, in October, which were like 1,300 pages roughly. And then I read 5 books in November, which were roughly 1,700 pages. So both of these months were quite decent for me. Like, they weren't super outstanding in terms of how much I read, but I read quite a lot of interesting books. Like, I think I liked basically everything in those 2 months. And also I was quite busy in those 2 months, so I had a lot of project work going on. So for that, I feel like it was quite good how much I ended up reading. And most of my reads here, or actually I think all of my reads here, were actually audiobook because yeah, I mostly didn't have time to sit down and make time for reading, but like I could listen to the audiobook while walking, while commuting and stuff. So that's why, yeah, most of it was on audio, which I enjoyed quite a bit. But yeah, let's get into the books. So in October, the first thing I finished is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I was surprised, and positively surprised especially, that I loved it as much as I did. If you don't know, I've been a bit like up and down with Brandon Sanderson. So I started with Elantris. I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was a decent debut book. Then I loved all 3 books in the first Mistborn trilogy, and I thought I was a mega fan at that point. Then I read Warbreaker, which I didn't love as much. I had quite a few issues with it, so that's why I was a bit afraid that I wouldn't gel with more like lighthearted Sanderson books, because I feel like in Warbreaker he was going for more for like a comedic book, in certain aspects, more for a romantic book, and those two aspects didn't work for me. So I was afraid to read some of his YA stuff. But I ended up picking Skyward. Actually, it wasn't in my plans to pick it up this year. I was planning to read it next year when book 4 was coming out. But I had a break in my schedule a bit because I was trying to read the Dresden Files short stories on Kindle rather than audiobook, which I also ended up changing later on. But yeah, that's why I had a gap in my audiobooks, because I couldn't just go to the next Dresden book. So I just randomly picked up the Skyward book, and I picked up the US narration by Susie Jackson, which I liked quite a bit. And yeah, I ended up really enjoying it. I'm really happy because now I feel like Warbreaker is more of an exception for Sanderson with me. So yeah, I feel like he's back on track for me now. So I really loved Skyward. I think he sets up the story really well. I think the plot is typical Sanderson, quite well executed. And what I really enjoyed in this book is the pacing. It takes a bit to get going, but once you're into it, then it's really good. And what I was surprised by is that around the 50% mark, when stuff started happening, I found myself being super invested in the characters and the relationships, which I just wasn't expecting from this book. And I think Sanderson does a really good job at realizing these characters, the main character, the side characters, but also the relationships and getting you invested into them. So I would suggest, even if you aren't vibing with the book for the first half, I would suggest to stick with it, because I feel like the second half is much better, and I love the ending of it. I think I would definitely suggest it. So yeah, so it's a great book. It has a lot of interesting sci-fi concepts going on, and yeah, it's a really good start to the series. And then I went back to the Dresden Files, which I just mentioned that I was reading the short stories on Kindle, but as I said, I didn't have too much time to physically read. I ended up deciding to go back to the audiobooks, and I read Briefcases, which is the second short story collection in Dresden Files. And this one you're supposed to read between Skin Game and Peace Talks, which are books 15 and 16. And I've been very mixed on the Dresden short stories. I don't think any of them are bad necessarily, but I feel especially since you're supposed to read them between the later books, which are super great, I feel like it's just a bit annoying to read them. So in Briefcases, there were a few that I really liked. There was Zoo Day, there was Cold Case, and yeah, a few more that I enjoyed quite a bit. But it was just always with both Briefcases and Side Jobs, I was always itching to get back to the main novels, which I guess makes sense because the story of the main novels is great. So I've been I don't know how I would suggest to read these necessarily. I know some people do chronological order, they read the short stories in between the books that they're set in, so they don't have to read all of them at once. But I was just binging the story, so I don't know which way I would prefer. I do think that that Briefcases is good to read before Peace Talks, because a lot of things that happen in Briefcases kind of get referenced or play a role in the final two books, or the most recent two books. So yeah, I would suggest that you read them, but for me personally, I didn't love all of them. But they are quick to read, so it's not like you're spending too much time on them, but I was just itching to get back to the novels, which thankfully, after Briefcases, I could go right into book 16 of Dresden Files, which is Peace Talks. And Peace Talks tends to be, obviously I can't say a lot about the plot of the story because spoilers, it's book 16 of a series. But if you've been following my wrap-ups, you'll know that I've been enjoying Dresden Files a lot, and yeah, Peace Talks was no different. Peace Talks tends to be a more divisive book from what I've seen, but I really enjoyed it. I feel like it had a lot of character moments that I really enjoyed. I really loved the start of the book. I loved a lot of the character moments in between. I don't think it has the strongest plot in the Dresden book, because this one and the next one are kind of weird because they were supposed to be one book, but then were split. So this one feels a bit like it has a bit of a smaller plot, but I feel like it still feels like a book that ends its main plot. It's not like it doesn't feel like an unfinished story to me. What it does is it starts also the plot of the next book, so it can kind of feel like, okay, you left threads open. But since I had both of them available back to back, and also since I knew that that's what would happen, it wasn't a big issue for me. So I feel like for people who probably read it when these came out, they came out like 3 months apart, so it would probably be annoying to just have to wait, because basically where Peace Talks ends, the next book just picks up right in that scene. So that's basically the issue that a lot of people tend to have, and I personally didn't have that issue, so I really loved it. I think it fits really well with the Dresden books, and I feel like it sets up the next book in a great way. Which the next book I read, now we're in November, but it is book 17 of the Dresden Files, which is Battleground, and wow, this is my second favorite Dresden book. So this one takes all the setup that Peace Talks does, and this is just straight a battle. Like, it's just 400 pages of a battle, and like, for me that doesn't sound great, to be honest, because I'm not somebody who loves action that much that I'm like, if there's a book that's just action, that I'm like, okay, that's will be great. But what Butcher does in general is he's really good at having character moments, at having really heartfelt moments while having action. So yeah, I really was surprised how much I loved it. Like, I was a bit afraid, because this is also a divisive one in the Dresden Files because of the heavy focus on action. But I personally really enjoyed it, and I feel like even though it's very action heavy, like even more so than all the other Dresden books, it still does not feel repetitive to me, because I feel like the action sequences are all so different, and he manages to make them different in terms of how the action unfolds itself, how the relationship between the characters affects the action, and there are a lot of like emotional moments in between the action scenes. So I feel like it was great, but I can definitely see if you're not super into action why you wouldn't love this book. But I feel like the action was well done. I feel like everything apart from the action was great as well. So yeah, I don't think it's on the level of Changes, which is still my favorite Dresden book, but I think it's as close as another Dresden book got, and I'm really looking forward to see what Butcher does with the series now. I'm a bit sad that I'm caught up now, because now I have to wait for the next few books, and there are still like 8 books supposed to come out, so I'll have to wait a few times for the next few books. But I'm already feeling like rereading it, because I feel like it's crazy. Like, I've been talking about this, and I think every Dresden fan talks about this, how the books just keep getting better and better and better. And that's true. Like, it's amazing how well Jim Butcher develops as a writer in like all aspects, in my opinion. Like, the plotting gets better, the world building gets better, the character work gets better, and he just gets a lot better as a writer, in my opinion, as well. And then what's also great for the audiobook, James Marsters is such a good narrator, and he also gets into the series a lot more as the series goes on. And then the emotional scenes hit even harder with Marsters narrating them, because it feels like he's really emotionally attached as well. So it's great. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you still haven't picked up the Dresden Files, or if you have read the first 3-4 books and are unsure whether to continue, keep going, because I feel like Dresden is great. Dresden, it's hard to explain how it gets better, because the premise of the first book is something that sounds quite silly to a few people, like you have a wizard detective in Chicago, but it turns into so much more than that, and a lot of that is a spoiler. So I feel like it's hard to tell people to like just stick with it until book 7 or book 8, but that's what I personally suggest, because for me personally, none of the books are really bad. Like, I feel like unless you really don't like the books, or don't like at all how they're structured until book 5, I think then it's safe to drop the series. But if you have some fun with it, but don't think it's great, I think it's worth sticking with it, because I feel like everything from book 7 to book 17 has been great for me. So yeah, and I know that's the case for a lot of people. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a commitment to say like, okay, even if I don't enjoy the first 3-4 books, I'll just keep going, but I think it's worth it. Now, since I was done with Dresden, I had to do something else, and because I already had read Skyward, and I was like, okay, Cytonic is coming out in a few weeks, I just went into Starsight, which is book 2 for the Skyward series, and I enjoyed that one also quite a bit. So what's interesting with the Skyward series is that Sanderson makes some risky decisions at the end of his books, and yeah, I think I can see why these books would be divisive, but I feel like so far both of those decisions have paid off quite well. So I really enjoyed Starsight as well, and I feel like it really expands on a lot of things that we saw in Skyward. It does a lot of interesting things again with the sci-fi concept, and yeah, it gets really interesting, I would say. Like, I don't want to say too much because it's kind of a spoiler to say what happens in Starsight, but yeah, I think it was a really good sequel. I didn't love it as much as I loved the first book, but they were very, very close. And yeah, I kept going with Skyward because then you have two novellas that are supposed to be read between Starsight and Cytonic, which is book 3. So I read Sunreach, which is the first novella. And yeah, these novellas are written by Brandon Sanderson and Jancy Patterson. So yeah, and these basically fill in a few of the gaps between books 2 and 3, and then there's supposed to be a third novella that's supposed to fill in the gaps between books 3 and 4. I feel like I really enjoyed Sunreach and the next one as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend to read them between Starsight and Cytonic. But so I will say it like this now. They released them between Starsight and Cytonic, and I would say that the books are structured in a way that it's better to read them before Cytonic, but I will say not reading them. I will say not reading them will not ruin Cytonic for you, but reading Cytonic first might spoil like a big part of the novellas, which I feel like it's not worth it because I think the novellas are pretty good, and I feel like knowing what happens in the novellas makes a few scenes in Cytonic a bit better, in my opinion. But like, I feel like if you hadn't read it, you wouldn't even notice that you were missing something. So I think they've done a good job there, but I feel like the novellas will be more important for book 4 as well. I do think like even in book 3 there are some things that you'll be like, okay, what happened, and those answers are in the novellas. But as I said, it's not necessary to read before Cytonic, but I would still recommend to read them because they're great. So yeah, Sunreach, it follows a character that I quite like. It follows a plot that I really enjoyed and like was quite fun. So I really enjoyed it. And then Read On. So also these novellas, they pick up right one after the other. So they are a series kind of in themselves. So Read On, which is the second novella, I also enjoyed that one quite a bit. I thought that plot was a bit more serious, but also really well done. And I felt like it was, yeah, the execution of it was really, really good. And I feel like the things that are happening in these novellas fit really well with the story of the main novel. So I feel like that those were done very well. And then the final book I read in November is Cytonic, which is book 3 of Skyward. And yeah, this came out on November 23rd, and I picked it up immediately because I just happened to like catch up, I think, a day or two before that, so that was great. And yeah, I really enjoyed Cytonic as well. As I said, with Starsight, he again made quite a risky decision in this book as well. Again, I can't say too much, but yeah, I think so. This one, again, for me took a while to get started. Like, I wasn't feeling it at the start, but I feel like this is probably the best in terms of character work for the main character, and has a lot of other concepts going on that I really enjoyed. So I really enjoyed the second half of the book, and I feel like, yeah, I think I like this more than Starsight, but not as much as Skyward. But all three of them are really, really close for me, and I enjoy all three immensely. So I would definitely recommend this Skyward series, and I'm really looking forward to see how Sanderson wraps it up in one more book, and if he writes a longer book, because I feel like there are still a few things that he needs to address. And yeah, but I'm really looking forward to read Defiant will be for book 4, and I think that's supposed to come out around this time next year. And I'm also really looking forward to read the third novella, which is Evershore, and I think that's coming out at the end of this month. So yeah, a lot of Skyward content this year. So he's like put out 2 novellas, 1 novel, and then another novella in the last 4 months of this year, which I really enjoy. I know a few people have been like annoyed that he's releasing like novellas that are kind of important for the novels. I think they're really good, and I like getting more content. But yeah, I think it's not like the quality is going down. So I feel like it's well done. But yeah, if you're not into novellas, I guess I can see. But all right, welcome back. So yeah, now you should have heard what I read in October and November, and for December and January, it's actually not that much because I didn't finish anything in either of those months. Actually, that's not true. For December, I had finished only one short story, which is Monsters by Jim Butcher, which is a short story in the Dresden Files, which hasn't been compiled in either of the two short story collections in the series. So this one came out after those two, and I think it's set between books 15 and 16, or 16 and 17, one of those two. And yeah, so that one, I'm not counting it actually on Goodreads because I don't think it's even listed now on Goodreads. So I'm just going to wait to count it until a new Dresden Files collection comes up or something. But yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I thought it was one of the better short stories. Like, the short stories have been pretty up and down. This one follows the character of Goodman Gray, which, if you've read through the Dresden Files and you know who he is, like, he's introduced pretty late. But yeah, I enjoyed seeing his perspective, and I think Jim Butcher has mentioned that he may do a spin-off series following this character, and I was a bit reluctant. Like, I'm not super hyped about that, and I'm still not super hyped about that. But after this short story, I think there's more potential now than what I previously assumed. So on that front, good job. And I think if you know what kind of character this is, I think it's a pretty good exploration of his perspective in the world. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't read it, you can find it in the Parallel World anthology. I forgot who the editors on that are, but yeah, it's just called Parallel Worlds, and it should be pretty easy to find. Yeah, and I would definitely recommend it. It's not that long. I read it on a flight, so. And then for January, I didn't finish anything. I was back home, and yeah, I was spending time with my family. So yeah, I read a bit of Eye of the World, but didn't finish. I read a bit of Time of Contempt, which is book 4 in The Witcher, and also didn't finish. So mostly that's it, because December, January didn't happen too much, so I think it's kind of good that I could just compile all these reading wrap-ups into one at the end, so it's not too bad. February has been a lot better already. I've already finished like 4 things in February. I'm about to finish one more. So if I'm on time this time, I'm not going to make promises anymore, but if I will be on time for my February wrap-up, that one should be more interesting, because I read a few things that maybe would surprise some people. But yeah, so for this reading wrap-up, that's it. I hope you liked it, and yeah, so this was just, for me, a short one. I guess with the Past Me section is probably quite long, but yeah, for me this was pretty short. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the books Past Me talked about, or if you have read Monsters by Jim Butcher, then let me know how you feel about Monsters. I think Jake from Jake Bishop is actually one of the only people I know who actually read it. So yeah, Dresden fans, go read that story. Or don't. The Dresden short stories don't really live up to the later novels, but I really enjoyed Monsters, so whatever. Yeah, I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.